Welcome to the Foundry, where leaders are forged daily. I'm your host, George Roberts. Hello, entrepreneurs. Welcome back. This week, we interview Dan Lewkowicz, a seasoned real estate veteran with over 15 years of experience in many facets of the real estate industry. Starting his career house hacking, he quickly moved on to flip houses in and around Metro Detroit and eventually created a company called Renaissance Real Estate Ventures, which specializes in the acquisition, financing, renovation, and resale of single-family residential properties in the booming city of Detroit, Michigan. Dan is founder of Oakland Real Estate Ventures. Dan is also founder of CRE Pro Course, which teaches you how to become a top commercial broker. Dan is currently Director of Investment Sales at Encore Real Estate Investment Services, where he oversees transactions in the retail, industrial, medical office, quick service restaurant, and shopping center categories. Before joining Encore Real Estate Investment Services, Dan was a senior advisor at Fortis Net Lease, specializing in commercial real estate investment sales. Dan is also a former business development executive for Amazon in Detroit, Michigan. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Yeah, hey, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I always like to start by asking our guests, what was the most interesting job you worked before turning to entrepreneurship?
Great question. I would say that the most interesting job that I worked before turning to entrepreneurship was the job that I worked immediately prior, which was as the business development executive for Amazon in Detroit.
Any elaboration?
Yeah, I mean, Amazon is a huge company. I think that they've created an incredible culture amongst their employees. And some of the Amazon leadership principles really resonated with me and stuck with me. The idea of being customer centric, which is what Amazon strives to do, was very important. The idea of thinking big, of taking responsibility, and if there's something that needs to be done, stepping up and being the one that does it. I just think that those principles that they base their culture on, they were very entrepreneurial. And Amazon itself, at least from in a business development perspective, where I was very entrepreneurial, and I think that's what attracted me to the position. Ultimately, I felt that I needed to be more entrepreneurial, but it was definitely the best place that I think that I was prior to that.
That's a great lead-in, and what a great company. I mean, any company that pioneers the idea of 2-day shipping, same-day shipping, that's real customer focus. Yes. So then at some point, you moved into entrepreneurship and more specifically into real estate. So how did you get that start in real estate?
I got that start basically in around 2005. I started a business with my good friend of mine called Disability Made Easy, which was a barrier-free home modification company. So we would take homes and make them handicap accessible for individuals with terminal illness or disease, injury. And I was in charge of the sales and marketing. However, I'll never forget, I used to go out with the project manager. And the first time I ever went out with him, we went to a site that was functionally obsolete. It just was not a great looking home. And the individual needed some modifications to make it handicap accessible. And I'll never forget that moment where I stood there with him and he brought out his graph paper and his tape measure and his pen, and he drew. And in 2 minutes, he had created, a piece of art. And that really stuck in my mind. And that's really what guided me to purchase my first home. And instead of buying something that was, move-in ready, I bought something that was distressed and dilapidated and in functionally obsolete. I changed the whole layout, renovated the entire home. And that really, got me on my start in house hacking and then single family, property investments and sales. But it was that one moment, seeing that potential, seeing something that looked one way and that could be turned into something else. And ever since then, I've always, whenever I see something, I smile when I see, an old property with that charm and that character, knowing that I have and I could, convert it into something very meaningful and enjoyable for the new owner.
Yeah, that's very exciting. That's one of the fabulous things about being in real estate. You get to serve a real basic human need.
Oh, totally. 100%. And help people.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So what about economically? Did you have some aha moment where you realized like, hey, I'm working for the man, so to speak, and what I'm doing isn't going to get me to my financial goals?
Yeah, definitely. When I was at Amazon, another aha moment was, I remember I was in the shower and I was thinking, man, like I'm leaving, and Amazon's a great job. Made a great living. I said to myself, what do I need to do, or better yet, how many homes do I need to own in order to completely replace my Amazon income? And the answer was, in the city of Detroit, 20. So I went out and bought those 20 homes, and I started renovating them and tenanting them, and working on those properties. And to me, that was like, wow, I could do this, and then theoretically, I could just sit back and collect rent for the rest of my life and never have to work at Amazon. And now I have freedom, right? I'm a founder. I now have freedom to do whatever I want. And that to me was a big aha moment. And to be honest with you, from the perspective that I'm at now, I think that we have a broken system, right? Because we train people, we start them out in school 9 to 5, right? Trying to get them into that groove of 9 to 5. And then we tell them they have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on college. And then they get out of college, and then they have to give, 2,000 plus hours of their year to an employer, so that employer can make tons of money, and they can, just scrap by and work really hard and try to invest and try to save up, so that one day when they're 65 or 70 or 75 or 80, they can stop working. And I think we have it backwards, because if we're up to me, I would like my kids, I want them to be involved in internships and in business opportunities from a very young age, because this country affords us so many liberties. And one of those liberties is the ability to own our own property. And another one is the ability to own our own business. And there are so many benefits to being a business owner. I just think that I would love to see more people open their eyes to those possibilities.
Yeah, that's truly amazing. As they say, build your dreams, or you're going to be hired to build someone else's.
That's right.
So now you've branched out into multiple entrepreneurial enterprises. So it looks like your number one enterprise right now is your CRE Pro Course. So maybe you tell us a little bit about the origin story of that enterprise.
Sure. Yeah. So the origin is basically, I like to say, it's kind of reverse Field of Dreams. They came, so we built it. And what I mean by that is that, I guess I'll step back a second and then explain this. When I started as a broker, I really had to figure it all out on my own. The commercial real estate brokerage world is a sink or swim mentality. All these people are brought in, they're thrown in the waters, and whoever gets out, the few that do, they have to really struggle their first number of years until they get their hands around the different nuances of the industry. So, through my years, I created systems that worked for me, and I set aside systems that didn't work for me. And recently, I'd say over the last year specifically, I was getting 3-4 phone calls a week from friends or people I didn't even know who reached out to me on LinkedIn, and they said, Dan, I want to become a commercial real estate broker. There are no resources out there. Tell me how to do it. So again, reverse Field of Dreams. They came, we decided to build it. So meanwhile, my partner, Zach Rasinger in Austin, is having a similar experience, right? He built it all himself. He became successful. People are reaching out to him. And we said, you know what? We need to design a course. There's a need for this. So we came together and we spent so much time and energy putting this together. We've got 25 modules. It's professionally produced in studio. We have all different types of collateral information. So we teach you everything from basic just industry overview of asset classes, the difference between a leasing broker and an investment sales broker like me. And then we go ahead and we talk to you about how to choose tenants to database, how to create a database, how to cold call. We actually have these cute little whiteboard role-playing cold call videos. And then right below, you click on a button and you get to download all of our cold call scripts. We teach you how to put together a proposal, how to research a building, how to underwrite it, how to abstract a lease. We go through all the steps of marketing, creating marketing material, marketing your property, fielding offers. We give you templates for letters of intent and purchase and sale agreements. We talk you through how to go through the entire process of bringing a deal from start all the way through to closing. And then we talk to you about how to leverage that closing and market it over again so that you build more business and more listings. We also have modules on social media, specifically on LinkedIn, how to leverage LinkedIn as a commercial real estate professional. And it's just something that doesn't exist. We just released it after months and months of hard work about 3 weeks ago, and the feedback has been absolutely tremendous. We're seeing our first graduates who are out there. They got their license. They're running strong, doing deals, and it's just awesome to be part of that.
So that's amazing. It reminds me of one of my other favorites. entities, which is Khan Academy. And similar story, right? Had his cousins and other family members, friends coming to him and saying, "Look, I can't do this math. Help me out." And he found his niche. And what an amazing thing that is. So tell me a little bit more about this. Can you get continuing education units for this?
So great question. We've had a lot of people reach out about that. So as of now, we have not partnered with any institution that would allow us to do such,
Mhm.
but it's definitely something that we're considering, being that um, there's tremendous value in education, and I think that it'd be a win-win if we do that. The more that I hear that, the more that I think it's something we have to do.
That's great. And it sounds like an outstanding course. I actually got a real estate license. I didn't use it, but it was a fabulous training. And
Mhm.
I know that not all of those continuing education courses sound nearly as fabulous as what you're doing. So without a doubt, send me those links and we'll make sure that that's available in the notes of the
Sure.
podcast. So it sounds like maybe the next big step for your enterprise could be maybe getting the continuing education units or partnering up, or would be something else like maybe marketing and getting yours out
Yeah.
more widely.
So we just hired a PR firm. We've got some press releases coming out next week. I do have a position available on LinkedIn. We're hiring a marketer to help us with this. We've also put together an affiliate sales program. So if there's anybody who wants to help promote this, we give you your own link, your own landing page, and as a reward for joining in our quest, you get 20% of the proceeds from the any sales that you drive. So we're looking to really build a community and build a tribe and build a group of people that are part of something that's bigger, part of something meaningful, so that we can really continue to add value.
That's outstanding. So who would you say had the biggest influence on your entrepreneurial career?
Oh, good question. I'm going to answer this in two ways. So I think latently, below the surface would be my father.
Mhm.
I'm actually first generation American. My father was born in a refugee camp in West Germany. His father was an entrepreneur. He built a business in Europe that was destroyed by the World War II, and then he built a business in Germany that was destroyed, and then he built a business here in Metro Detroit. My dad followed suit and had his own. He was an independent pharmacist. He owned his own pharmacy in Detroit, and I think that growing up around that, although I was not interested in that particular career, I think just the idea that what he put in was what he would get out. I think that was definitely something that resonated with me and inspired me. And then in terms of other influences, I would have to say that I've had a number of mentors over the years that also own their own businesses. They were founders as well. And just to see, again, like, you take the average worker who's putting in their 2,000 some hours a year. I mean, yeah, they're having impact on the company, no question, but what kind of growth are they seeing? What kind of interpersonal growth are they seeing? What kind of entrepreneurial growth are they seeing? What are they actually doing, right? How is it affecting them? How much power do they have to affect change to other people? And then I compare that with some of my mentors who started organizations and nonprofits and businesses and built real estate empires, and it's night and day. So I've been fortunate to have some really incredible mentors along the way. And as part of our CRE Pro course, we actually have a mentorship program available. So if people take the course and they want higher level services, we have buttons right there in the course that allow you to reach out so that we can provide those same mentorship opportunities that we were so lucky to be part of.
Yeah, that's outstanding. And what a great network to be a part of with entrepreneurs. I find that personally to be an extraordinarily inspiring place to be. So, do you have an inspiring quote or maybe a big why, something that keeps you going as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So I always say provide value and everything else follows. I think I learned that from Dan Gilbert, who's a big mogul here in
Okay.
Michigan. He said that his quote was dollars follow. I like mine better because dollars follow just like leaves it open. Like, yeah, oh, that makes sense. Dollars follow. But I say provide value and everything else follows. And I'll tell you, that's one of the most liberating principles that I live my life by. Because when I'm talking to a client, I don't care if they hire me. When I'm talking to a client, I don't care if I sell their building. Obviously, I care. But my purpose of the call is not to be overly salesy and win the business. My purpose of the call is to add value. And what I found is that if I add value, everything else follows from there, including dollars. So for me, it's been really liberating to have that motto. And again, if I wasn't a founder and I was just a guy working at W-2, I don't think I could live that way, because value is not always valued at corporations.
Fascinating and well put. It's definitely a different world out there when you are charting your own course. So to take that a little further, what sort of advice would you give to your younger self?
So that's a great question. It's a question I ask on my show as well. I definitely, number one, would say get started earlier. Like I look at where I am in commercial brokerage, and I've got an intern who's probably 15 years younger than me. And I'm like, man, if I could be in her shoes, like where would I be today? So start earlier. That's number one. Number two would be find a cure for shiny object syndrome. Because I know that I always suffered from shiny object syndrome until probably my mid 30s. And when I finally was able to unifocus, and I had heard this from people all the time, Dan, focus on one thing and be an expert. And I was always like, yeah, that's garbage. There's so many things to focus on. I got a fast mind, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't until I literally said, I am going to become an expert in one narrow focus, and I'm putting blinders on. If it's an opportunity, I'll say no, I'm focusing on this. That really was huge for me. So I would have told myself to definitely start earlier and to, find a way to cure shiny object syndrome by being unifocused, on one thing. And then I also would probably have found a way to outsource more at a younger age. I have an assistant, I've got an intern, I've got systems set up, and it really helps me to have the freedom that I want in my life. So I would have done that earlier. I would have made those investments earlier.
I love that. That is beautiful and inspiring advice, and very helpful too. So let me take a little pivot. And you have been involved in many different phases of real estate, including multifamily. So not something you're currently doing. I believe you're focused on triple net,
Yes.
which is a exciting and very fascinating place to be. But you also used to underwrite deals and put them into syndication with your
Yep.
partners. So
Yes. Yeah. So, my background was more along the lines of single family, property, purchase, renovation, and resale. But we often came across, especially in the city of Detroit, a large number of highly distressed, larger multifamily. So we're talking anywhere from 80 to maybe 300 units. And a lot of times what we would do is we'd walk the property, and we would, create different performance based on renovation costs and, re-tenanting the property and cash flow analyses. And then those properties would be purchased and renovated and put into large syndications. So it was interesting for me to see to be part of that. I think that had I continued along in the residential space and not gotten into net lease brokerage, I definitely would have made a transition from flipping single family houses to flipping large, apartment complexes. Something that I'm definitely fascinated by. And maybe as I am able to, outsource more and free up more time, maybe that's a direction that I'll go in the future.
And so I think a lot of my viewers may be a little bit more familiar with the multifamily space. So tell us a little bit about what is triple net lease and why is that such an exciting space to be in?
Sure. Okay, great. So we'll make a contrast between the two, just for purposes of illustration. So in a net lease, the reason that it has that name is that the rent that an investor collects is net to them. So here's a great example. I've got a deal I'm working today to Wendy's property. It has $125,000 of rent. Okay, let's say we had a small multifamily that had also $125,000 of rent. Here's the difference. At the Wendy's property, that $125,000 of income of rent is also the net operating income to the investor. Why? Because the tenant, not the landlord, pays for the taxes. The tenant pays for the insurance. The tenant pays for any common area maintenance. The tenant pays for any maintenance or repair to anything in the building: roof, structure, parking lot, HVAC, doesn't matter, whatever it is, you name it, the tenant is responsible. There's no management whatsoever. There's any landscaping or snow removal, parking lot, it's all on the tenant. So 125,000 is 125,000 no matter what. Now let's change gears over to the multifamily. $125,000 in gross collected rents, right? That's your income. But what about your expenses? You might have a management fee. You'll have insurance. You'll have taxes. You'll have vacancy costs, right? You'll have capital expenditures or capital reserves. You might have to put a new roof on the property. You might have to shovel the snow or get the grass cut. So now at the end of the day, because the expenses are variable and not set, the net operating income is going to be that gross collected rent minus all those expenses. So in a nutshell, that's the way that I would describe the difference between multifamily and net lease, which is, again, the rent is net to the investor. Now, why is that such an exciting space? Well, I already touched on some of those issues. Number one, it's completely predictable, right? 125,000 is 125,000. In fact, in almost all leases, they have built-in rental escalations to hedge against inflation. So not only do I know what I'm collecting this year, but I also know what I'm collecting in year 17 or 18 or 19. Now, further, the leases are secured typically by large national tenants who have many times hundreds, if not thousands of locations. So with your multifamily, if somebody stops paying rent, or if you just can't fill up the space, you've got a vacancy. Here with these net lease deals, even if that tenant decides to shutter the store and go out of business at that location, because the lease is guaranteed by those other hundreds or thousands of locations, you're still guaranteed to collect rent. The only exception would be if the tenant goes through bankruptcy and the judge sets aside those leases. So there's a lot of stability, there's a lot of security, there's a lot of guarantee, and we know what we're getting. It's also incredibly passive. Many net lease investors never go to their properties because they have no need to. So essentially what we're looking at is a bond, right, that has a guaranteed rate of return with hedge against inflation that happens to be wrapped up in some sticks and bricks.
Yeah, I like that. I'd like to amplify a few things there. You mentioned, what you're collecting in year 1, 2, 17, 18. And I think that for a lot of people who may be more familiar with single family or multifamily, the length of these commercial leases is just amazing. And that's really to the benefit of the tenant, right? I mean, they don't want to get all this advertising out and they get their customer base and then have to move. My understanding is a lot of times in the middle of the lease, they'll come to the landlord and say, hey, we want to re-up for another 5 or maybe even more years.
Yeah, in many cases, that's correct. And there's certain techniques, I don't know if we'll get into them today, but certain techniques where an investor can actually build massive amounts of equity in their property by actually lowering the rent and agreeing on a longer term lease. It's called a blend and extend.
I like that. I love those techniques. And something just escaped my mind, the idea of, oh yes, well, what happens when there are vacancies? My understanding is that, if you are in that sort of commercial space, you have a space that may be very, for lack of a better term, very specialized, right? I mean, if you're renting to Wendy's, you can't just turn around tomorrow and start serving Whoppers. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I've got a real live example right now. There's a Wendy's, perfect example. Wendy's deal that I'm working on that has only about a year left on the lease, and the tenant, we know for a fact the tenant is not going to extend. So what we're talking about doing is actually purchasing the property, spending a few $100,000 with the improvements to the property, and then re-tenanting it. But in this case, because the current tenant is paying such low rent and they have such a short term left, the property is not worth very much. Once we do a little bit of renovation, we put in a tenant that's going to sign a 10, 15, 20-year lease, right? And they're going to pay way more rent because right now we're way below market. Now that property might have $1 million of equity built into it. So that's another incredible example of an opportunity in the net lease space.
Yeah, I love it. So, again, to make the analogy to multifamily, people look at that as a very stable thing, and it is. But when you're able to weather these, from time to time, having your property vacant, which it can be difficult to find somebody, or having to renovate in between tenants, you can have extraordinary, literally, like you said, calculable bond-like returns. And that is amazing, especially at a time where, just to opine for a minute, looks like we could be ready for hyperinflation or assets literally crashing, losing total loss of value in many asset classes, like the office space, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to have some rather high returns and being able to calculate that in the future, that is a really amazing thing. So how about this, Dan, can you send us out with a memorable story from your entrepreneurial journey?
A memorable story from my entrepreneurial journey. Can you be more specific? Anything
Well,
that
something like, earlier you actually brought up something that was just fascinating about how you were helping to make real estate uh, accessible to people with disabilities, like something like that. One of the things I think is amazing about being an entrepreneur is you literally do get to you get to change people's lives in a way
do?
that you don't necessarily feel that way in a W-2 job.
Yeah, so let me give you one that stands out to me. So at one point in time, it was kind of cool. I love to be ultra specialized, and there was maybe a half mile by half mile square in the city of Southfield that I knew like the back of my hand. So what I did was I went to the city, I printed out this huge map, right? I still have the map in my office,
Yeah.
and with color and codes and all that. And then I went with a friend and I drove around the entire neighborhood. It must have been 700 houses. And any home that had a sign of distress, I color coded, I wrote down the notes, and then I put these color coded sticky notes on the map. And then I would spend every Saturday and Sunday knocking on doors, telling people, hey, I want to buy your home. And that's really one of the ways that I catapulted my single family investment career. And anyone who wants advice on what to do, I've been there, I've done that, I'm happy to help. So I had heard that there was an individual who had moved from out of state. And lo and behold, he was doing the exact same thing in the exact same neighborhood. So most people would say, man, this guy's my competitor. I got to find whatever I can do to put him out of business. Well, there was this one house. I had been in contact with the owner. And to my dismay, one day, to my surprise, a sign went up for sale. And I was like, what the heck? This is a house I was supposed to buy. What's going on? So I walked over to the sign, and it was not a typical, big box sign. Somebody had put it together. So I called the number on the sign. This guy picks up, and who is it? It's that guy. It's Daniel. So I said, hey, I know who you are. I've heard all about you. Everybody tells me that you're my competition. I want to take you out to lunch. He said, okay, sure. So I sat down with him and I said, look, you're doing the same thing I'm doing. I'm doing the same thing you're doing. Let's do it together. And we became business partners. And to this day, he's a good friend of mine. He's in my house all the time. We've done a lot of deals together. And he actually quickly became a big mentor of mine. And I was doing a lot of deals where I had some involvement, and I knew I could have made more money doing it myself. But the educational component of working with him was tremendously valuable. And that maybe is something that I'll close with, is even today, when I get involved in deals that I'm not familiar with, I seek out experts and I partner with them and I make it worth their while, because the educational exchange that I get for that interaction is worth its weight in gold. And I highly recommend that other people do that as well.
I love that. It all gets back to providing value. And I'll just send it out with, look at my room here. I am not from Orlando. And so to keep up, I got my entire place is just covered maps. You want to talk about writing on the map? Here's my you remember you used to go to the gas stations if you're old enough?
Yeah. There it is.
So I'm telling you, that is a great way to go, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not doing that, do it. Whatever your real estate market is, the number one rule is to know that market. So I want to thank you, Dan, for an amazing and inspiring interview. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Happy to be here.